Hello everyone, this is Dr. Baker, and this video deals with module 3A, and 3A works with ratios, decimals, and proportions. So we will be working with the problems that are highlighted, and we'll start with number 1 and then continue with 3 and beyond. Over here to the side, you'll notice some notes that would be helpful for you, and that's the way we convert specific forms of numbers. So the first piece of notes you see is the steps you take to convert percents to decimals. And to convert percents to decimals, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Then to go backward, if we have a decimal and we want to convert the decimal to a percent, we will move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Then if we had a percent and we wanted to change the percent to a fraction, we just divide by 100 and then simplify that fraction. To convert fractions to percents, we divide to get the decimal. That's the first step. And then the second step, you would move that decimal point 2 places to the right. To change a fraction to a decimal, you just divide. All right, let's start with number 1. We're asked to write this percent as a decimal. Percent to decimal, we just move the decimal 2 places to the left. So we have 58%. We'll take 58. All right, let me rewrite that. We'll take 58. And as a whole number, our decimal point should always be at the end. We're going to move that decimal point 2 places to the left. So the answer would be 0.58. And that's the answer for number 1. Number 3, we're going to write this percent as a decimal. Again, percent to decimal. We're starting with 1.4%. To change this to a decimal, we would move that decimal 2 places, 1, 2 to the left. And see that empty spot, will fill in that empty hole with a 0. So 0.014 would be the correct answer. Now to convert a percent to a fraction or a mixed number in simplest form. 2%, to change a percent to a fraction, you simply divide by 100. So we'll take the 2, divide by 100, and then we want to simplify if possible. We can reduce this fraction. We can divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. So the reduced fraction, 2 divided by 2, the numerator would be 1. 100 divided by 2 would be 50. So as a fraction, 2% is equivalent to 1 over 20. That's the answer for number 4. Now for number 6, write this percent as a fraction or a mixed number in simplest form. Now to change a percent to a fraction, we divide by 100. So 150 we divide by 100, and then we reduce if we can, and we can reduce this. We want to type an integer, a simplified fraction, or a mixed number. Now our fraction, 150 divided by 100, can be reduced. What can we divide into both the numerator and the denominator? We can actually divide them both by, now look and see what can be divided evenly without a remainder. Now we can divide both by 10. They both end in 0, so we know we can at least divide by 10, and then we'll continue from there if we need to. So we'll divide the numerator and the denominator by 10. 150 divided by 10, that gives us 15 in the numerator. And 100 divided by 10 gives us 10 in the denominator. Look, we can still divide and simplify this a little bit more. We can divide 15 and 10 again by 5. 15 divided by 5 gives us 3 in the numerator, and 10 divided by 5 gives us 2 in the denominator, so 3 halves. 150% is the same as 3 halves of a fraction. That's the answer for number 6. All right, number 11. Write the decimal as a percent. Now, to change a decimal to a percent, we just simply move that decimal point 2 places to the right. So 1, 2 places to the right. Fill in the empty holes with 0. So it will be equivalent to 60%. That's our answer for number 11. Number 12, write the mixed number as a percent. So 9 1/2 as a percent. We can look at this mixed number, 9 1/2, right? We want to first change it to decimal form. Now, what is 1/2 as a decimal? That's just 0.5. And the 9 in front would make that 9.5. And we know how to change decimals to percents. We move the decimal 2 places to the left. 1, 2 places to the left. And fill in the empty hole with a 0. So 9 1/2 is equivalent to 950%. That's our answer for number 13. And number 14, of the mountains there are over 12,000, or that are over 12,000 feet, 23 out of 84 of them are located in the central province. Write this fraction as a decimal, and if necessary, round to the nearest hundred. So first, to write this fraction as a decimal, we need to divide. So 23, we need to divide 23 by 84. So if we're dividing out by hand, we should have the 84 outside of our fraction bar and the 23 inside of our fraction bar is how we want to divide. Now we'll notice 84 cannot be divided evenly into 2, nor can it be divided into 23, so we need to add a decimal point. Now adding that decimal point allows us to expand this 23 and make it 230. And then we'll figure out how many times 84 can be divided evenly into 230. And that'll be 2 times. And 84 times 2 gives us 168. We need to subtract. And 0 minus 8. We can't take 8 from 0, so we have to borrow from the 3, making our 0 10. 10 minus 8 gives us 2. Now remember, we borrowed to make this a 2, and 2, we can't take 6 from 2, so we have to borrow again, making that 2 a 12. And now 12 minus 6 gives us 6. We have a remainder of 62. Now 84 cannot go into 62, of course. We'll carry down another 0. We're going to keep dividing because we were asked to round to the nearest hundred. So we need to round at least 2 places after the decimal point. But we still need that third digit. We still need the neighbor to the right, so we'll know how to round to the hundred space. So we need to have at least 3 digits after the decimal point. So now we're asking, how many times can 84 be divided into 620? And that'll be 7 times. 84 times 7 gives us 588. We want to subtract. Again, we need to borrow, and we'll go ahead and start borrowing out here because we see our 2 is too small. So that 2 becomes a 12, but we're borrowing once more because we need that 0 to be 10 so that we can subtract 8. Now 10 minus 8 gives us 2. And 11 minus 8 gives us 3. All right, we'll keep going here. Add another 0 behind our 32. And we're dividing 84. How many times can 84 be divided evenly into 320? That'll be 3 times. All right, so we can stop here. We have 0.273. These are our dividers. And we're asked to round to the nearest hundred. So we're rounding where the 7 is, but to determine how to round 7, we have to look to our neighbor on the right. If that neighbor on the right is 5 or higher, then we will round up. We'll round 7 up. But since this neighbor to the right is less than 5, 7 remains the same. So our answer would be 0.27 for number 16. All right, let's look at number 18. Write the ratio as a ratio of whole numbers using fractional form or fractional notation. So look at our ratio that we're given, 10 to 50. So as a fraction, 10 to 50 would just be 10 over 50. What we have to do is make sure we simplify the fraction. Now, one tip is whenever you see pairs of zeros divided by each other, you can actually cancel out those sets of zeros. That's the same thing as dividing by 10. So our answer here would just be 1 over 5 once we cancel that set of zeros. All right? Just a reminder here, when you're dividing 10 by 50, what can I divide into both the numerator and denominator? You can divide both top and bottom by 10. 10 divided by 10 gives you 1. 50 divided by 10 gives you 5. So you see, by canceling the sets of zeros, it's the same thing as dividing by 10. All right, let's look at number 20. Write the ratio as a fraction in simplest form. So again, we have 35 returns for 400 sales. So 35 over 400. We just have to reduce this fraction. We don't have sets of zero that we can cancel, but you'll notice your last digit in your numerator is 5 and the last digit in your denominator is 0. We know from knowing our product rules that numbers that end in 5 and 0 can both be divided by 5. So that's what we'll use to simplify this fraction. We'll divide the numerator by 5. 35 divided by 5 gives us 7. And the denominator by 5. All right, so remember you're dividing both top and bottom by the same digit. Whatever you divide in the numerator, you must also divide in the denominator and vice versa. So 400 divided by 5 gives us 80. So 7 over 80. Now what does this 7 represent? Remember the 35 was at the top. That's our top number. So the 7 represents the number of returns. The 80 in the denominator, what did that bottom number represent? It represented sales. All right, so 7 returns for every 80 sales is what we're looking for in this multiple choice question here. 7 returns over 80 sales, and that's letter B. All right, number 21. One student drove 370 miles in his car on 13.5 gallons of gasoline. His brother drove 200 miles in his truck on 9.25 gallons of gasoline. All right, so we'll just write a ratio for each of these brothers. The student drove 370 miles, that's 370 on 13.5 gallons of gas, so 370 over 13.5. And then the brother drove 200 miles, that's 200 miles, 200 over on 9.25 gallons, so 9.25 gallons in the denominator. Now, for part A, you're asked to find the unit rate. Unit rate is the amount of 1. So if you drove 370 miles on 13.5 gallons of gas, how far was driven on 1? We just have to simply divide. So we're dividing 370 by 13.5. And when we do that division, what we get, we make sure we round properly. It says round to the nearest tenth as needed. So we'll round that and we'll get 27.4. And that's 27.4 miles per 1 gallon. That's the unit rate. Now, the brother drove 200 miles on 9.25 gallons of gas. So we're dividing 200 this time by 9.25, and we're rounding again to the nearest 10, and we'll get 21.6. So part A, the student who drove the 370 miles in the car, so for the car, part A, the unit rate would be 27.4. And the truck, the brother drove the truck, we got 21.6. Now letter C says, which vehicle gets the better gas mileage? That's the vehicle that drives the farthest on a gallon of gas. So which car or which vehicle drives the farthest? It's the car. So we would say that the car gets better gas mileage than the truck. All right, that's the last example from Module 3B. We'll end here.